Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the James Whale Radio Show. Now, Happy New Year to you. Thank you for joining me this beautiful 2015, wherever you happen to be, where I am at the moment, which is in my dining room. The sun is shining. Now, before we start the programme today, and it's a special to start the new year, this is the first James Whale radio show online on radio of 2015. Before we do that, let me wish you a Happy New Year. The new year hasn't started, has it, particularly well? Some of the news stories around the world have been pretty depressing. And I'm often this time I'm fairly pensive, and I wonder, does mankind ever learn from its mistakes? If you read history, not that I do, by the way, but if you look back in history, we're making the same mistakes today that we made 1,000 years ago and even further back. Maybe it's the human condition. Maybe we are never really going to get it right. That whenever anything annoys us or whenever we have a difference of opinion with somebody, what we do is resort to violence in all kinds of ways, whether it's shouting, whether it's fighting. There is some kind of violent intercourse between peoples who disagree. If I had any wish for the universe or the world this 2015, it would be that we actually learned at some stage to realize that we all have different views and different thoughts on why we're here, what is the meaning of life, etc., etc., and that we could all appreciate everybody else's differences. It won't happen, but it would be nice if it could. Now, that's slightly deep, isn't it? Robbo, sorry about that, mate.
That's okay. That's okay.
A very happy New Year to you.
Thank you, Mr. Whale.
And long may we continue to come here and chat for an hour or so a week. I think I'd miss it. And, of course, some of the other radio shows and maybe occasionally on Sky TV. And who knows what this year will bring for all of us. Let's hope it is as positive as my guest. Now, this is a special today. This is a young guy that I have known since he was about, 12, 13 years old. Now, I have to apologise, first of all, that the sound quality may not be as good as usual because I was away and doing it from my iPhone. He was in his studio in Barnsley, but I enjoyed the discussion. I wanted to talk to him before. He has been talking about his life-changing experiences on a number of programs. But I want to introduce you to my friend Simon Hirst. Well, he was Simon Hirst in 2014, and in 2014 he ended his long-running radio breakfast show of 15-odd years. He'd been doing breakfast for Capital Radio, and he suddenly rang me just a few weeks ago to tell me that he was going to not be Simon anymore, that he was going to change his name and change his sex to Stephanie, because although he's relatively young as far as I'm concerned, still in his 30s, he has, he says, been living a lie. He's been living as a man, and he has the brain and is a woman. And I think what he's decided to do is very positive, and he's a very brave guy. So this is my chat with, now, in 2015, Stephanie Hirst.
James Whale, James Whale, James Whale Radio Show.
Now, let's have a chat to my old pal Hirsty from some considerable time ago, who's concerned that he may be interviewed out. Is that right?
Well, there's a pronoun fail there.
Cocky with me.
Am I interviewed out? I'm not interviewed out. I maybe it's just my radio brain that's kicking in a little bit, in the fact that I've done lots of interviews recently about being transgender and the change that I've gone through over the past 3 months. So I'm just acutely aware that I just don't want to, do overkill. Maybe that's just, it's something which is inbred into us, isn't it? Because we work in the world of media and broadcasting. You don't want to overkill.
All right, well, let's park the reason that everybody's talking to you one side at the moment, and let's just talk about the Hirsty that I used to know.
Can I play something at the start of this interview? Because for me, you've got to realise that this is a little bit weird. Because I grew up listening to you on the radio. You were pretty much the first person I ever remember on the radio. And I used to ring up your show, and you used to do a thing called Do-It-Yourself Dedications, where before you went to adult speech from 11 o'clock on Radio Air, you would allow people to come on and introduce their favourite record, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would.
And you would always start the show like this.
Outside, and I'm feeling alone, so I turn that dial, and the radio's on. I hear James Whale, and my troubles are gone. I hear James Whale on the radio. I hear James Whale and his late night show. I hear James Whale on the radio. I hear James on the radio. James Whale and his late night show. James Whale on the radio.
So I listened to Radio Air at 10 o'clock every single night, and your show would start like that. And now I'm chatting to you all these years later as well about this, and it's like, ah!
Where did you... I haven't heard that since I was about 32 years old.
I've got everything.
James Whale.
Oh, I've even got an advert you did. One of my earliest memories on Radio Air is listening and recording adverts like...
Faster hire, $9.95 plus VAT, any car in stock, all C&D registered, and no mileage charges. Faster hire, ring Leeds 489900. Unbelievable, but true.
The thing is, me and Moyles can do that word for word. We can, because you got to remember that we grew up listening to you.
I am interviewing...
I'm sorry, James. Is he there?
I think he's gone.
Oh, technology.
Are you there?
I can't hear anyone.
Ah, well, we can hear you perfectly. That was going so well.
That was going so well, wasn't it?
Oh, dear.
Oh, that's just the start. I've got loads.
Oh, dear. James, are you still there?
The thing is, with that Faster Hire commercial, me and Moyles can do that word for word. Because we grew up listening to you.
Right.
Sorry.
I'm doing the interview with you.
Sorry. So you started your career at United Biscuits, didn't you? Well, you at UBN, and then you went on to Metro, didn't you? And then, I'm taking over again.
No, you carry on. You might as well interview me for a while. I'm sure people will find that fascinating.
I'm sorry.
I didn't do UBN. Metro Radio in Newcastle was my first ever radio gig, and I started a thing called Radio Top Shop in London.
Yes, you did. Yeah, I did some Radio Top Shop in Leeds, and it was run by a guy called Peter Knott. I do remember. I don't know whether he was anything to do with it when you were back there, but yeah, was that on Oxford Street?
No, he wasn't. It was my idea. It was completely my idea. And I thought, I'm about 200 yards from Radio 1. Surely I must get on. And, of course, I didn't. And I went straight into commercial radio.
But lots of people did. That, being 200 yards from Portland Place, lots of people did work on Radio Top Shop in London and get spotted there, didn't they? I think Adrian John was one that was spotted as well. I think Johnny Bealing's daughter went in and she liked him, and he was hired. believe it.
Oh dear! If you want to get into radio, make sure the program controller's wife or daughter love you.
Exactly. So I do apologise, yeah, but I've got lots more clips because I was fascinated by your show, and even though I wasn't old enough to, because I'm 39, so I'd have been listening 87, yeah, probably 86, 87, 88, 89. And so a lot of the adult conversation I didn't understand, but, you know, characters like Margaret from Beeston and people like that always stick in my mind. Yeah, it was a and also because that was my early fascination with speech radio. That's how I fell in love with it, by listening to your show.
And you ended up working more or less after I'd left, but you came just before I went. You actually got work experience there, didn't you? If I remember correctly.
I did. I came in a few times with Paul Stead, a mutual friend of ours, who got me into radio air. And I remember coming in and during some summer holidays and working on your show briefly. I was just a kid. But I remember bringing bits of paper through and pieces and stuff like that to your studio late at night when Paul was there as well.
Do you know how Paul Stead got into radio?
Yeah, did he bring you a pizza or something like that, and he poisoned you or something?
Yeah. He bombarded me with letters and phone calls and hung around outside the radio station and said he wanted to get into radio. And he brought some food in one night, and we ate this food, and he was telling me about his... And I had the most appalling food poisoning, and he, at the time, said he was a chef.
Yeah, chef being in the loosest possible term.
Yeah, and of course, now he's got his own company.
Yeah, he's a very successful award-winning TV producer.
Yeah.
But he used to work in a
he has yet to offer me any work, by the way, and I remind him about this from time to time. But then, of course, Moylesy came in and interviewed me for his school radio station once. And I don't know, the whole thing seems at this particular time fairly bizarre.
Yeah, it's we were very lucky to be around radio air because we were surrounded by some great broadcasters. You know, yourself, Peter Tate, who was a wonderful broadcaster, wasn't he? Amazing broadcaster. Yeah,
Peter was a good pal of mine. Sadly, he died. It's a very sad story. You know, Peter contracted brain cancer, and I remember after, you know, I had cancer, so everybody knows that, about 15 years ago. And Peter rang me up one day, some weeks after I got home from the hospital, and he said, "Look, he said, I don't know how I couldn't cope with it. I don't know how you manage," and everything like that. You know, people say those things. And he rang me a couple of years later. He said, "James, I need to talk. I've been diagnosed with brain cancer. What do I do?" And it's very difficult to say anything. I said, "Well, you just have to go with the flow, mate. You just have to see what happens." And Mrs. W and I went up to visit him. In fact, we actually picked him up from hospital and took him home to his place. But he was very, very ill. And you remember Carl Kingston used to work there, and Carl was his particular mate and looked after him. It was a sad time.
They all rallied round, all the old jocks who worked together at Radio Air, Carl, Paul Stead, you know, yourself, to help Peter. And he was an amazing broadcaster. It started at I think, was he at UBN and Radio Trent and places like that?
Yeah,
so
he was.
Yeah, great broadcaster. So
let me tell you a story, a very funny story. After the funeral, and we all went to the funeral, and that obviously is fairly sad. Yeah. And
then we went to the pub, didn't we? There was a pub we went to. I remember.
Winton was a very good friend of Peter Tate's, and Dale worked on Radio Trent with him, and I won't go on about it. I'm sure lots of people in radio know, but what happened was I came up from London by train, and Dale said, "Oh, I'm in my car. Can I give you a lift to the station?" I said, "Oh, yeah, Dale, thanks very much indeed." Very flash car, obviously, with Dale, top-down Mercedes. And he said, I like people to be able to see me. I said, good. And we stopped at traffic lights, and people in the car next door put their window down, and he said, "Oh, I'll just say hello." And they sort of leaned out and said, "Whaley, how are you, mate?"
Love it. Oh, bless Dale.
Yeah, you know, Peter Tate and Dale Winton both started out on the same radio station together.
Yeah, they did Radio Trent in Nottingham. So I was around great broadcasters, and, you know, when you're young, 12 years old, 13 years old, and you're addicted to this medium called radio, you soak things up like a sponge. And, yeah, I definitely think me and Moyles were most definitely affected by the people we were around in those early days and inspired us.
Well, that's sweet. I felt the same way about Tony Blackburn and Johnny Walker, funnily enough.
Yeah.
And when I was getting into radio and, when I was sort of young and at school, I used to listen to Blackburn and I used to listen to Johnny Walker and all the pirate radio stations. I thought, what a great way to earn a living.
Absolutely. I'm fascinated just by the history of radio. I think if you work in a particular medium or an industry, you should know about its history. And this is with the new generation of DJs and broadcasters coming through. I'll always give them tapes and of people from the past, yourself included, James, and listen to how these people communicate. Noel Edmonds in the 70s, he's known now for Deal or No Deal and for a particular, age group, Noel's House Party and Swap Shop and stuff. But in the 70s on Radio 1, on his breakfast show, he was an amazing communicator. Wonderful. So there are things we can take from people in the past and bring them to the modern day, and it's all about communication at the end of the day, isn't it? One-to-one.
Exactly. Either people love you or they hate you, but they must have an opinion. It's no point in people not having an opinion about you, because that's what makes people want to listen. And the same with Chris Tarrant. Chris Tarrant was a TV person who went into radio and became very, very successful.
Yeah, I remember watching Tiz Was and Swap Shop when I was a kid. Although I watched more of Swap Shop more than Tiz Was. But I do, that's where I first remember Tarrant from. But because I grew up in Barnsley in Yorkshire, I never heard him on Capital. I heard tapes of him, of course, but I never heard him firsthand. And like Kenny Everett, who's my radio hero, along with yourself, of course. But Everett just makes the radio come alive for me. Just wonderful creative
Maybe I could be Dave Cash to your Kenny Everett.
Possibly, yeah. Dave Cash, Kenny and Cash shows from the 60s again. They were groundbreaking, weren't they, on Radio London?
Well, I work with Dave Cash now on a BBC station. I do a programme on a Saturday. He does one in the evening, and quite often he's in the building, and I think, there's Dave Cash.
Yeah.
He must be nearly 80.
I messaged him on Facebook, about a week ago, because I was listening to some old pirate radio stuff, and there used to be a DJ on Radio London called Tony Windsor, TW. And
hello, TW. Hello.
And on this particular thing I was listening to, there was a clip of him on Radio 399, which was another pirate station, which was an easy music listening station. But TW did the mid-morning show on Radio London and was hugely successful. You've got to remember the audience figures, because there was nothing else at this point, were huge. And then to go over to this easy listening station, I wondered why he left. So I thought, well, who was there? I know Blackburn really well, so I could message him. And then on my Facebook, Dave Cash came up. I thought, I'll message Dave. So I messaged him, and literally within about 20 minutes, he messaged me back. He says he doesn't remember. He remembers him, TW and Kenny Everett having a particular argument, and Kenny coming off best. But apart from that, he doesn't remember why he left. But I think it was to do with ownership of Radio 399 that he left, and I think he invested in it or something like that.
Well, it was very sad. I met Tony Windsor, who was when I was just a DJ in a club in North London, and this guy and some friends came up and said, "Oh, hello, I used to be a DJ, TW, Tony Windsor," and he used to go, "Hello." And he said, you should get into radio. And all people often tell you things like that before you get onto radio. But Tony Windsor was a very sad case, you know, and I'll tell you another interesting story. He ended up working for my dad, who had a pub near King's Cross in London. And my dad had found him in the gutter, literally in the gutter one day. He'd taken him in and he'd given him a job in the pub, and then he disappeared and nobody heard from him again. And apparently he died a rather lonely death. Yeah. But he was a great talent.
Great broadcaster. Australian guy, wasn't he?
Yeah. Anyway, listen, enough of this talking about me. Let's talk about you. So we've now people know and may not have heard you used to do the breakfast show on Capital in Yorkshire.
Yeah.
And you've been on the radio for what, 15, 16 years now?
I started at Radio Air when I was 12, and then I got on the air when I was like 15, 16 doing the overnight show. Because after Moyles left to go to Luxembourg, I picked up some of his work, some of the cover work and stuff like that. So it's probably about 22, 23 years I was on the air pretty much every day. And I did breakfast for 15 years, and 11 and a half of those were at Capital / Galaxy, because we were Galaxy originally and then we changed to Capital. And had a wonderful time, and it was I had an amazing time, but also twinned with sadness as well, the fact that I was dealing with gender dysphoria and had done since some of my earliest memories. I've said this in quite a few of the interviews recently, that a lady got in touch on Facebook and told me that she worked with my mum, and I recognised her name, and she worked with her in the 70s, and she'd had a conversation with my mum when I was about 3 years old, and I'd been questioning why wasn't I a girl. So it goes way back, and my kind of earliest memories are around 8 years old. But the radio took me away from that. It created another world for me, for escapism. Why didn't I feel right? I didn't know anything about it. There was no internet. I couldn't really get any books out from the library at an early age about it. Only that came in my early mid-teens, when I started to get books out from the library. And then when we got the internet, of course, I was online searching for information, and documentaries on TV would occasionally come up. But yeah, radio was the escapism.
You know, I mean, last time we actually physically got together was both worked for the same radio company, different radio stations, and I think that was the last time I saw you at the Billingsgate, the old Billingsgate Fish Market. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that was the last time I saw you. Although I may have seen you upstairs at Capital, I think, when you were at LBC. I think I saw you there briefly.
You're absolutely right.
I was passing through.
And I've met and interviewed in my long life a lot of people who have changed gender, and you surprised me more than any. You rang me one Sunday a couple of months ago, didn't you?
Yeah, I rang you before the it was in fact it was a Saturday night. It was before the Stephen Nolan interview went out, and it was that evening, because I wanted to make a few calls to people who are close friends and people I admire, because I felt I wanted to tell them personally, and you were one of those people.
And then Chris Moyles came on and started acting the goat. I remember very well.
Yeah, because I was with Chris and my publicist Megan, and we were at Chris's house listening to the Stephen Nolan interview that night that I taped on the Thursday evening.
I had absolutely no idea, because you've always appeared to me to be a very happy-go-lucky guy who was enjoying life, who had everything, really. You had a career, you had a career that started, as you said, when you were very young. But to never have spoken to this to people at all. I mean, did you never share this with anyone at all?
Yeah, I mean, I shared with girlfriends, and in fact, a friend of mine, John, who I grew up with, he comes from the same state as me, in Barnsley. And let me just search in my phone for the message that I sent to him. I sent him a message just after I came out, and where are we here? Okay, I said, he sent me a message, says, "Hi mate, good on you. You'll always be my pal no matter what. We need to go out next Bank Holiday Monday for a good drink." I went, "Yeah, hey love, yeah." More bank holiday piss-ups. Can I swear on here?
Yeah.
And I said, how old was I when I first told you I felt like this? And he said, I called at your house and you were wearing your mum's clothes when you were about 11 or 12 and you said you were experimenting, but you told me not to tell anyone, so I didn't. Your secret was safe with me. So, yeah, he knew about this when I was 11 or 12 years old. And then I did tell girlfriends over the years. In fact, all of them, really, I confided in. I remember actually laid in a hotel room telling one girlfriend when I was about 26, 27 and physically shaking. I was terrified that she would leave me, and she didn't leave me. But I remember physically shaking. My teeth were chattering because I was so scared.
Did you see the TV show A Boy in a Dress the other day?
No, I didn't. I've recorded it. I need to watch it actually. But I had lots of messages from friends telling me, you should watch this. I've been so busy. I've been here, there, and everywhere. But it's there. It's ready to be watched. I do need to watch it.
You do, and I'd love to talk to you about it afterwards. Okay, now. Let me ask you this, and don't get all upset, but this is how I do it. Why did you decide that you were going to go for it in a big way? Why did you suddenly decide that you would get a publicist, that you would talk to the media, and you would actually put yourself right out there in the firing line, and in a way, you would make yourself a spokesperson for transgender people? Some people unfairly may say to you, you're becoming a professional transsexual.
The reason I decided to do it publicly was to keep my career. Because, as you've heard in this interview and other interviews, I love radio. If I didn't do it publicly and I just went away, changed my name, and did it quietly, my brand and everything I've worked all these years would be, it'd be destroyed, it'd be gone. So on one hand, I didn't want to lose my career, but on the other hand, I was willing to lose my career. So it was a mad dichotomy almost, because, great, I'm going to do this publicly because I need to keep the Hirsty brand or the Stephanie Hirst brand, Simon Hirst, whatever, how people know me. But also, if they reject me, well, I'm willing to take that risk as well because I need to be me. I can't have this mental anguish anymore. It's destroying my quality of life. So that's why I did it publicly. I could have gone away, and people have said to me, and friends said, are you going to move away from Barnsley? Are you not going to do radio anymore? No. Just because of my gender changing doesn't mean I'm any different a broadcaster, if you know what I mean. I've always had a female brain because it's biological, so I will continue doing what I do. I'm a broadcaster and an entertainer. That's what I do.
I think you'll be so much more successful as a woman, seeing that they are very short, apparently, of great women on the radio. Although I hear great women on the radio all the time, but
exactly, yeah, me too.
There need to be more people on the radio. I can see you being up there, breakfast on Radio 2 after Chris Evans goes. Who knows?
Who knows? I mean, I regardless of gender, it's how good a broadcaster you are, isn't it? At the end of the day, we're only as good as our last show, as they say, or our recent work. So yeah, I constantly want to evolve, as I always have done in my work, and I should be allowed to do that regardless of gender, because I would allow anyone to do that regardless of gender.
If I was to give anybody any kind of advice, and I never give any advice because I haven't achieved enough to, I don't know, I always reinvent myself. I don't feel I've been doing this job for very long. Once you feel you've been doing it for a long time, as I meet people who say, "Oh, I've been on the air for 10 years and I'm all finished," and I think, how ridiculous. I mean, I look forward to the next show.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
But it may be bad, but I look forward to doing it.
I'm excited about the future. And I think after almost 15 years on Breakfast, that box was ticked. I was very lucky that I never talked about the awards or plaudits or anything like that, because maybe I'm from Yorkshire. I don't like to shout about stuff like that. But yeah, I think in breakfast, I think I did about 14 awards, record audience figures. There were some Sonys in there as well, Sony Academy Awards. I was very, very, very lucky. So that box is well and truly ticked, and I think I came off at the top of my game. I think I did. I hope I did anyway.
I'm sure you did. Now let's talk about how down you got. Did you get really? I mean, did you contemplate jumping off a bridge? Did you get that down or not?
Oh yeah, it was death or transition. Yeah, it was absolutely. I used to be driving home from Leeds to Barnsley in the car, and I could have quite easily turned that steering wheel into the central reservation. What stopped me was the fact that I would hurt other people, and not just family members and friends, but I would hurt other people around me on the motorway. So doing something like that, that was no good. But I could have done, and I used to scream on the way home in the car. I'm not a particular tablet taker. I may have some headache tablets in, Anodins, paracetamols, or anything like that. So I don't have a lot of pills in the house, but I was thinking, right, okay, so there's a pharmacy there, there's another one there within a couple of miles. So I could nip to about 6 or 7 pharmacies, actually, and I could get a good collection over a couple of days of tablets. So if I do, that would work. So I'm plotting in my mind how to kill myself, because it wouldn't go away, and I couldn't see any other way out. It was either lose my career, which I couldn't do, hence doing it publicly, or kill myself. That was I slumped against the kitchen cabinets. And animals are very very perceptive, aren't they? They know when something's wrong. And my cat I had at the time, Dave, he is an affectionate cat, but he was a boy cat at the end of the day. Tomcat, and sometimes wasn't that affectionate, but whenever I was down, he was always around me. He knew. I was on my backside. Yeah, literally sat against the kitchen cabinet, slumped with my head in my hands.
All right. So why did you suddenly decide it is time now? Why didn't you decide back when you were 20 to have made listen, let me sort this out now? Why did it suddenly happen?
For the fear of losing radio. I think it was radio that remained me male for the years that it did, because I loved it, and I was in such fear of losing my career. Because back then, years ago in the late 80s, well, I suppose 90s was my early heyday in radio. I would read things in magazines and newspapers where things weren't received in the greatest light, so that always used to put me off. Maybe the press and the media's response to it scared me, so I didn't want to lose radio because I loved it so much.
Do you think that radio as a medium is fairly homophobic, transgender phobic, different? Do you think that radio has still tried to hang on to being very middle of the road, middle class?
No, not. I wouldn't say it's like that now. Maybe it was like that because the world was a different place in years ago. But not so much now, no. I mean, I remember coming into first contact with someone who was gay when I was at Radio Air when I was a kid. I'm from a council estate in Barnsley. There was no one who was gay around me. Although I did go to school with a guy, and I had an experience with him when I was about 15, 16. But we were both in puberty, and I very much knew from an early age that I wasn't gay. I just knew I was a girl. But I was around people in the radio industry who were gay, and I was raised by my parents to treat people the way I like to be treated, have respect for them, regardless of colour, creed, gender preference, whatever. It doesn't matter. Everyone should be treated as an equal and respected. So that's how my parents, raised me, and I treat people on face value.
Why, when you decided to make your announcement, did you then decide also to leave your radio program? Because I would imagine, had you gone on doing the radio program during your transition, you would have had huge listening figures.
I was tired. I was drained. I mean, really drained of 15 years of breakfast. For anyone that's done shift work or has had to get up really early, you'll know that it mentally drains you. And then if you are doing a job which is broadcasting, for any broadcasters, you'll know that, 4-5 hours on the air can mentally drain you, because I believe as human beings we're given a speech quota of words per day, and if you use them up in a 4-hour block after a show, you don't really want to talk, do you? When you've done a big shift on the air, you're like, well, I can't speak. I've used all my words for the day. So I would come off the air feeling very drained, and that, along with the transition that I'm going through now, to do a daily breakfast show on top of that would have been a bit of a strain, I think.
How far are you going to go with this transition? Are you going to have surgery, or is it just going to be you with longer hair?
No, complete transition, the whole lot. What's the point in doing half a job? I don't believe in doing half a job. If I'm going to do a radio show, I'll do a good radio show, or an average radio show. Self-deprecation act there kicking in. I will always. I'd never do half a job. Never do half a job. So why would I want to present as female, but down there still have anatomically male parts? No. It doesn't disgust me, but I don't want it. No, I've never really wanted it. Have
you had much adverse comment or publicity from people? I mean, I would imagine, knowing you wouldn't be bothered anyway. Stuff them. If they can't accept me for who and what I am, then stuff them, I would imagine, is your response. But have you had some fairly small-minded, negative people get in touch?
Keyboard warriors, as I like to call them on social media, Facebook and Twitter and email and stuff. I mean, email-wise, I've had nothing bad come through at all. But Facebook, Twitter, there's been no negative comments whatsoever. I didn't see one on Twitter. Facebook, if I was to do it as a percentage, 99.99% of people have been unbelievably supportive. 0.1% were negative, and the thing is with the haters and the keyboard warriors, what amuses me is that they can't spell either, so it makes it double. If I just think, do you know, what, bless you. I kind of feel sorry for them, really. And because I was bullied at school, for me it's sticks and stones. The only thing they can do to me is physically hurt me, but I was physically bullied at school, and so to me it's like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I don't think I would give them the title of warrior. I think warriors are people to be respected. I think these are just, well, I shouldn't say wankers, but to be quite honest, that's all they are basically to me.
And because people are just, as a rule now, more accepting. What I find on Facebook is if anyone, especially on my like sites, where there's a good 150,000 people on there, so not ridiculously huge numbers, but there's quite a lot of people there. What you find is that if someone does post something negative, the other people, the 99.9% of people, will jump on them, and they end up deleting their comments.
I found that I don't ever have a go at people on Twitter or Facebook. I just let other people do it.
Let other people do it, yeah.
And, I quite like people criticising me. It's never bothered me one way or the other, or I wouldn't have done I'm doing quite a sane breakfast show at the moment, as well as doing this programme online, as well as a rather nuts weekend show. I'm probably working more than ever, but I actually don't think, unless people have an opinion, as I said before, there's not much point in doing what we do, is there?
No, there isn't. No. To be bland is it's just wallpaper, isn't it? You need to do something. What's the point in being a broadcaster if you can't express how you feel or communicate with the audience? Because radio is my first love. It's such a communicative but I wouldn't say industry. Yeah, I adore it. So to be able to communicate with the audience it's a privilege. But to sit and play another 13 great songs in a row and talking for 15 seconds, that doesn't really do it for me. I can do something great in 15 seconds. I can do something in 5 seconds, which is great. But to do that again 4 songs later and have another 5 seconds to speak, well, you're not really communicating with the audience, really, are you?
No, and the problem is, of course, a lot of radio stations think that is the way to go, which will be interesting over the next few years to see how radio pans out. And, of course, you and I are talking now. You're in one part of the country. I'm in another part. The producer's in another part. Some radio stations have invested so heavily in property and having prominent studios. These will just become unnecessary as the future continues.
Yeah. I mean, I do, but there are brands that I get what some brands do. And if you're a hit music station and you play a hit music station and you want hit music, boom, you're there. It's like buying a can of Coca-Cola. You know exactly what you're going to get. So I do believe that there is a place for radio stations that play a particular format of music and play in a particular style. But for everyone to do the same, well, there's got to be some choice out there. And I'm struggling with commercial radio because everyone seems to be doing the one-size-fits-all thing, banging out the same songs. You know, start to be a little bit more creative with their playlists. Yes, there are playlists. There's been playlists for years. Radio London, back in the 60s, they had a playlist which is very similar to what a lot of hit music radio stations today play, that format. So this is something which is not old, which comes from WABC in the 60s in New York. So this is not something which is brand new. It's been done for decades. But there needs to be, a little bit. I don't want to use the words more variety, but because that's overused in radio. But there should be. And you look at how much of a success Radio 2 is, because it communicates with its audience, and it just doesn't do the same thing every single hour of the day.
Well, I never thought I'd say this, but this is probably why you and I end up working for the BBC. We've done a complete reversal of how most people started in radio.
Yeah, true, maybe, actually, yeah. I mean, I genuinely have a love for commercial radio. I do. And I don't want to bite the hand that fed for 25 years, whatever. But I also love the BBC. I was raised to love the BBC. Yes, there are some problems, but there's problems in commercial radio. Nothing is perfect. Exactly. Nothing is perfect. And I'd like to do bits of both, really. I miss doing my vinyl show. I've got a huge record collection. And I miss doing that. I used to do that on Gold. The former Capital Gold, which just then became Gold. I used to sit and play from my home studio every song from the original vinyl recordings, and I was in heaven. I loved it. I called it Vinyl Heaven. I loved it. I adored it. I loved doing that. I really enjoyed it. So I would like to go back to doing something like that. But to sit doing music radio and having a particular length of time to speak, I can't. If I've got to pay the bills, I'll do it, but as a choice, no, it's not the kind of radio I want to do.
Listen, to wind this up, right? I need to ask you a couple more questions. Stilettos or flats?
It's depending on the occasion. Yeah, I'm bit of both, really. Bit of both. I mean, I was in my mum's heels from being until my feet grew. Actually, I'm in between. I'm like a 7.58. So my mum was a size 4. So, yeah, until I couldn't fit in them anymore, I was in them in secret.
Long or short skirts?
Again, depending on the occasion. I'm 39 years old. I can't be walking around in a short skirt. But, if there's a particular dress and you don't want it too high, because, I like to do things with a little bit of class. So it depends on the occasion again.
Hair up or hair down?
Currently it's up. I do like having it down. I like curling it. I like to have it down, actually, at the minute. I think, but it's possibly a little bit, it's novelty, but sometimes it does. I'll tell you what is interesting about having long hair, in the fact that when you're driving and you turn to your left or your right, it gets in your eyes and you can't see things. So I think that's why women drivers, we get bad names. I think that's probably why. That's why some errors are made because of hair. But also when you're eating food as well, that gets in the way. Also, I'll tell you what is interesting as well, because I wear headphones a lot. Earrings and headphones. Yeah, that's not a good match. They hurt. That's some things I'm discovering. Yeah, pressing buttons.
I bet you were like a toy in a candy store when you decided to do this and come out. You could then go and shop and buy all the clothes you always wanted, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think I decided to do this about 3.5 years ago. So from that point on, when I decided, I was shopping. I did shop, prior to deciding I was going to do it, but then would go through phases of purging because I felt guilty about it. So I'd get rid of stuff, which is actually lots of people who are on the trans spectrum go through that. Actually, it's a guilt thing. But for the last 3 years, I've been shopping predominantly actually in the sales time. So this time of year and summer and stuff like that, I went to town because it wasn't something I needed there and then, but I needed to build it for the future. So the essentials and stuff like that I would get in the sales.
I don't know if you remember, well, you probably don't because you were too young, but many years ago I did a late night TV show, which was off the wall at the time, probably now seemed to be very tame. And I remember going to a place in Manchester I think it was called Transitions.
Do you know what? I know James, that was information to me. The lady was Stephanie Hirst, and it was in Manchester, and it was called Transformation. And I remember you going. I think I probably have the episode on a VHS somewhere in the loft or at my dad's or something, because this was... I watched the show every week. In fact, I worked on it. I fetched some faxes to you because the porter cabin used to be out the back of the Radio Air, didn't it? So I used to run some faxes through when I was there with Stead. And I remember this particular episode, and thank you for covering that story and covering that place, because that was information to me as a 13, 14-year-old. That was important, because anyone who was transgender or any kind of, I know it wasn't cross-dressing. It wasn't cross-dressing for me, but it was something to do with being trans, and that was real information, and that helped me.
Well, funnily enough, I remember that episode quite well. And the thing that came across to me was the sadness. These were guys, quite often older guys, who had lived most of their life with this understanding that they were actually women. They weren't men, but they lived because of society, a lie, if you like. And this place gave them a couple of hours a week where they could go and actually be themselves. And until that point, interestingly enough, I had never understood or even thought about the problems of being a person trapped, if you like, in somebody else's body.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's biological. When you're in utero, there's a combination of estrogen and testosterone, and that can cause several problems. Some males are born with ovaries, and it's only when they get into puberty, when they're in agonising pain, and they realise and they're looked into, and the fact that they realise, I've got ovaries, that's what's causing the problem. And sometimes you can end up with because we all start female, don't we? So the brain will develop still as female, but the rest of the body develops anatomically as male, and that is where the issue starts. And over time, they've only found the only way to correct this is for you to actually be who your brain says you are. It's a sense of knowing who you are. We all know who we are. Lots of people listening to this will know whether they are male or female. You will know that you're a man, and you've never questioned it whatsoever. But if you're questioning it and there's an issue there.
Explain to me what is it then? What is the difference between what you've gone through and a guy who is gay?
Well, that's sexuality, isn't it? For someone who's gay or a lady that's gay, it's who you're attracted to. Gender and sex are two completely different things. Gender is who you are, whether you're male or female, and who you think you are yourself. This is not something which is a mental illness or anything like that. It's biological. And I also think that your attraction to other people, which is, you know, whether you're gay or straight or bisexual or even asexual, I think that is biological as well. I don't think it's a choice. It's not a choice. One of my friends recently, we were chatting, and he said to me, you will be unsurprised to know, and he said this to me before, and that's why he says you'll be unsurprised to know that I categorically, without hesitation, hate being gay. And, you know, he doesn't like it, and he's knocking on quite a bit now, but he's known all his life, and he's been out all his life, but he'd rather be settled with a wife and kids and a family, but that's not the way it is. So it's not a choice. It's most definitely not a choice. And I think once the general public start to realise that it's not a choice, and we become a society more educated on things like this, we then start to become more understanding. So I think soon as that, and I think that's happening now. I really do think we are in a real time of change in these past 10, 15 years. So it's a good time. It's a good time to be who you are.
I think you're right, but I think there's going to be quite a lot of trouble in this transition period, and I don't think religion, any kind of religion, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, or any other religion is helping the situation at all, and maybe they ought to understand these things a little more clearly.
Yeah, there was a story that broke a couple of days ago. I think she was from Indiana, I believe. I'm just this off the top of my head, but she came from a very strict Christian background, and her parents wouldn't allow her to transition, and she threw herself in front of a truck. This was literally 2-3 days ago, and she'd posted a message on Tumblr, and she said, "If you're reading this, you know, I'm obviously not here." And that's tragic, the fact that, you know, her parents just wouldn't stand by her. And that is, again, that is religion, isn't it? It's religion getting in the way of fact.
When are you going to have, your final operation? Presumably that is what you're working towards.
Yeah, I want to get really fit. With any operation, and especially an intrusive one like that, you need to be physically fit. So I want to get really fit. I want my inner core to be fit. I'm fairly fit. I'm you know, my weight's about 10 stone. So I'm not overweight. I'm in good physical shape, but I want to get my inner core really strong. And I think with any operation, if you are fit, the recovery time is much quicker, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right. I mean, are you still in two minds as to whether to go for the operation or not?
Oh, no. It's happening. It's absolutely happening. It's just a matter of when. If I can get it in 2015, great. If I want to get a little bit fitter, I'll do it in 2016. But within the next 12 to 18 months, it'll be done and dusted.
What about your girlfriends? I mean, when you came out, did you have a girlfriend when you decided to come out like this or not?
No, I decided that it wouldn't be right for me to be in a relationship whilst going through this. I just felt that I wasn't in love with anyone. I was seeing someone. I could have quite happily fallen in love with my last girlfriend because she's a fabulous human being. But I told her about it, and she's worked with a few trans people in the past, and she knows that, you know, I had to become myself. So, we set each other free. And also because, you know, I have that fairy tale in my mind, as all women do. I didn't want to give someone that fairy tale when I presented as male, then to take it away from them, and then to get children involved, have children and get married. I didn't feel that would be the right option for me, so I remained single because morally I thought it was the right thing to do.
No, I agree. I mean, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. I mean, is in your mind, the way we all have in our mind something, I suppose, that you want to be settled eventually with a long-term partner, male or female?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I have joked that, you know, if I am getting a few of my friends call the lady parts a tuppence. Which I think's a cute name for it. If I am getting a tuppence, I'm going to try it out, and that's me being very blunt. But that's my personality, you know. Estrogen's a very funny thing, you know. I've been fueled with diesel for the past 39 years, and now the past 38 years I've been on hormones a year now, and now I'm fueled with super unleaded, and it does change things. It really does. It puts things. My brain is getting the right fuel. The right hormone, and it does change things ever so slightly. It really does. So I have seen guys with beards.
Careful.
But yeah, bald guys with beards, actually.
Careful.
So yeah.
Or Moyles is going to get obviously very jealous.
He's not balding. But no. So I don't know. I possibly maybe bi. I don't know. I've no idea yet. No idea. So yeah, the jury's out on that. I'm not sure. Not sure at the minute. But
what happens when you're out for a good time? And I've seen some of your postings, so I know you're out with the girls having a good time, and a guy has no idea, hits on you. What happens?
I don't know. I mean, it's happened a couple of times. But I've not allowed myself to take it any further or anything like that. There's been nothing physical happen or any kissing or anything. Nothing like that. Nothing. Because do I feel ready for anything like that? No. So, yeah. But I think if I met someone, I'd tell them. I'd be absolutely upfront. Yeah, absolutely. Why lie? And would it put some people off? I think you can go out on a date with someone and, you know, they've had no gender issues whatsoever, and they can say one thing and completely put you off, can't they? So who knows? We can all be put off about certain people. So I don't know. There's someone for everyone out there.
Without trying to sound too ingratiating, well, actually, let me put it another way. Mrs. W, my long-suffering wife, has said that you look really attractive as a woman. I'm not saying that, by the way.
Tell her thank you.
She said, you see, you don't know this, but when I did and I better be careful here, when I did my television show, we had a guy who changed sex who was my main cameraman, and was quite, I was going to say, he didn't really suit being a woman, if you know what I mean. I believe... But you do.
Oh, thank you. That really means a lot. Thank you so much. I think that we are trained instinctively to recognise male and female. And anyone that we question, we double take it, don't we? And that can happen. That just naturally happens. You know, you look at someone, you'll know whether they're male or female instantly. But if someone doesn't fit that instant gender role in your head, you can sometimes double take. And I really would like to help people who are not as fortunate as some people to transition well. I've got some female friends, anatomically born female, and they're 6 foot plus, quite stocky, quite wide, but they wear clothes which are flattering to their size and their age. And you find that some people who transition, some trans ladies, they don't know how to dress themselves well, and they don't know how to dress flattering to their size. So I'd love to be able to help those kind of ladies. I really would, because it must be heartbreaking for them to be in public and to be what people call clocked. Yeah, people have double took me over the past, and I think it still happens. The thing for me is that when I used to go out constantly, I've gone out thousands and thousands of times before I came out, and I used to constantly not want to be read or want people to know that I was transgender. And now I've put myself out there, I get clocked, but clocked because I've put myself out there. So it's kind of like I've gone from not wanting to become recognised at all because of A, what I did for a living and being well known in some respects, and then now I'm putting myself out there. So it was a little bit mad in my mind for the first couple of weeks. It was like, oh, I'm getting clocked a lot. Oh, no, it's not. I'm not getting clocked a lot. It's because people have seen me. So yeah, but I would like to help people that are less fortunate. And also people who are, are going to have this operation done. I'm going to fund my own operation. I'm on the NHS at the minute for hormones and stuff, but when it comes to the final operation, I'm paying for that myself because I believe that there are some people who are not as fortunate as myself to be able to afford it. So my space in the queue should go to them.
Well, that's good of you, but I think on another note, I should say you've already paid for it because you've paid your taxes, you've paid your dues ever since you were about 15.
Yeah, true.
So I think you're probably entitled.
I am, but it's something that I want to do to help others. So it's something that's, I don't know, it feels the right thing to do.
All right, listen, we've probably gone on long enough. All I want you to do is promise that you'll call me when you come down south next, and you, me and Miles will go out for a curry. You keep promising, but you never come across.
We will. We were
and
saying
he can
this.
bloody pay as well.
We were saying this when I spoke to you on the night when I came out on Stephen Nolan's show. We were saying on the phone that we all should get together, and I don't think Chris will mind me saying this. When I was on the phone to you, he was mouthing the words, "It's James Whale, it's James Whale," because we grew up listening to you, and it's nice that we get to chat to one of our heroes and be friends with one of our heroes.
You're making me embarrassed now,
No.
please.
Who is your hero?
Who was my hero? Okay. Two heroes. I told you about my radio heroes, didn't I? Tony Blackburn and Johnny Walker, and lots of the radio people, of course. But when I was a kid growing up, do you know what I wanted to do?
No, go on.
I wanted to be a cowboy.
Oh, Roy Rogers?
Well, possibly. More John Wayne. I used to love John Wayne movies.
Wow. And did you ever meet him?
No, never met him. But I did end up going to America a few times through a guy I met doing my radio show on Radio Air, who was a cop in Chicago but had come on attachment to the Yorkshire Police. And we met, and I went over to Chicago, which, of course, was a center for the cattle industry.
Yeah.
And there are lots of cowboys around that area. I had a good time, but I don't think I would have made a very good cowboy.
I'm sure you would have. But yeah, it is lovely to be, like with Blackburn. And I met Tony on a flight to Australia. This was a year after he'd done I'm a Celebrity. So this would be, 2003, 2004, something like that. And I was doing my show out in Australia as well as he was for Classic Gold he was working with. And we sat next to each other and hit it off immediately. And Tony's become a very, very good close friend. And he's been so supportive through this. So supportive. And to have a radio legend, a living legend, just call and see how you are. When I came off the air, he called, going, "You've come off the air, what's going on?" And I told him about it, and he was so supportive. So, I'm very, very, very blessed. Very blessed.
It's funny, our lives seem to go in harmony. I hope I'm not contemplating changing my gender in the near future. Tony Blackburn got me into working with the BBC. Well, not personally himself. Well, yes, he did really, because he took a holiday from a radio program he was doing, and I was asked if I'd like to fill in after I'd left LBC, and that's how I started working for the BBC as well as doing the internet show as well. Strangely enough,
funny, isn't it? It's funny. Thank you for letting me speak to you, because it is a huge privilege.
Oh, don't be ridiculous. I should be annoyed anyway. You decided you'd come out on the Anthony Nolan show, the Stephen Nolan show.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, maybe you could have done an exclusive interview with me that we could have then sold to all the media and made enough money for my retirement.
We could have done. Hindsight is a wonderful friend, always late.
Yeah.
Always late.
Listen, love, take good care of yourself. And Mrs. W sends you all her love, although she's never met you. She would really like to, she says.
Well, I'd love to. I'll come down and visit. We'll go out for dinner one night. That'll be lovely.
All right, take it easy.
Have a wonderful 2015, although when people are hearing this, it will be 2015.
Yeah, and you. Talk soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Stephanie, thank you very much indeed. I'm slightly embarrassed at you trying to take over the show and interview me, but there we are. We'll have more guests in 2015 and more things to talk about. Join us here next week. And, of course, if you haven't already been to the website, jameswhaleradio.co.uk, there are well over 60 hours of programs that you can re-listen to. Maybe you want to hear this one again as well. A very happy new year. Join us next time.
You're listening to the James Whale Radio Show. For more information, visit www.jameswhaleradio.co.uk. Why not check us out on Facebook.com/James Whale Radio Show, or follow James on Twitter @The James Whale. James Whale, the voice of reason.